29th, 2025, getting towards the end of the year. It's been sort of a slow PSYOP week, but I guess I should specify that it hasn't really been slow in the sense of an absence of PSYOPs, but rather the ones we've been given are mostly of the soap opera variety. The shootings we had a couple weeks ago were about it, but it seems like they're closing up this year kind of quietly, like we're being set up for something. Fingers crossed. I'm hoping for the Oppenheimering of the West Coast, probably Seattle. What's up, Kolop? Here is your wrench. Oh, sorry, never mind. If you comment underneath the video, I'll give you a wrench. You will be a moderator. I can't right now from the window I'm logged in at. I'm on a backup account. All right, so we're getting close to the end of the year. I saw this article. The number one word, this is from Oxford, the most used word, the number one word of the year for 2025 is rage bait. Last year it was gaslighting, but this year the Oxford word of the year is rage bait. And I think that there were a couple of other ones that were really close. I'll see if I can find out what those. Oh, yeah, that's right. Biohack and aura farming. But anyway, rage bait. Online content deliberately designed to elicit anger or outrage. And there's a lot of that. And I don't respond to it. I mean, we're talking about what psyops are essentially about, which is emotional manipulation. So I don't get mad when I'm baited. When I see a picture of Bill Gates, I don't start frothing at the mouth like some people. And others go into TDS when they see or hear the name Trump. And Trump is nothing but engagement bait, rage bait, a lot of hopium. He's a major hopium dealer. The whole Q movement was hopium. Been thinking about that a little bit lately. There's no accountability from any of these former Q people about their years-long delusion, their gematria and Q drops and dog whistles and fantasies, fan fiction. I mean, honestly, it was pretty bad. I think it really peaked with the JFK cult, waiting for JFK to come back. But like, I met these people. I knew these people. I knew people who fell into that, and none of them have ever come over to me and say, "Hey, I'm sorry that we were misled and we should have listened." No, they just sort of went quiet, like nobody's noticing. No, we noticed. If you took the full Q pill and you were fighting the deep state and you were promoting all these lies, you should admit that you've been duped. Because that's what we're doing here. We're just unveiling the big deceptions. And it's the default position. We're all, by default, immersed in deep fakery. The world is deep faked. In fact, I think there was this report that said 1/3 of all of your online content, as in 33% of everything online is AI. 33% is fake. I mean, it's actually worse than that if you really think about it, but yeah, that's the stat. AI conquers YouTube. 33% of your feed is now fake content. AI generated videos now make up as much as 1/3 of YouTube feeds, raising serious questions about authenticity. Right. And I occasionally see these tweets from people who have figured out that you need to start auto hoaxing. The title of today's live stream is Auto Hoax Maxing. I was catching up on Nick Fuentes, and he's on a live stream with some guy named Clavicular, who does this thing called bone smashing, where he hits himself in the face with a hammer, citing, quote, Wolf's Law, and apparently the bones grow back thicker. And so he's basically engaging in body modification, includes double jaw surgery to make it wider and lower to get the Chad meme look, all kinds of things. He was offering recommendations for Nick Fuentes, like leg extensions, not the exercise, but like getting your legs sawn and then extending your legs to make yourself taller. But anyway, looks maxing is what they call it. And I'm like, this is just gender affirming care for the woke right, because it's specifically a woke right thing. And they're hyper judgy about people's faces. Like they're worse than the transvestigation people. They're like looking at faces and making these comments about the distance between the top of the lip and the nose, or the angle of, and they're going into the nuance about faces. It comes off as disconnected from reality. But anyway, that's where Nick Fuentes is at. Candace Owens, I have a little breakdown from Grok on this one. It's hard to keep up with that whole thing because she uses innuendo. She never really. What's the latest with Candace Owens? Conspiracy Candy, by the way, which is a satire, is available on Audible if you want to listen to the audiobook. Thank you, Thirst for Truth. Appreciate the tank fuel accelerant. This is the thing. Autohoax accelerationism. This is the point where we know what we know, and we know we're not wrong, so we have to platform this. And as this platform increases in size without sacrificing quality, it can then become a little more active with regard to challenging prevailing orthodoxies, which is what we're about to do. And I'm preparing for the great deconstruction, which is going to happen in 2026. Sooner the better. And once it starts, there's no stopping it. And I don't think anybody really has a clue outside of our circle. And that's fine. You know, I'm not trying to alert the opposition. I think they're actually helpless. It's actually kind of interesting to watch how the people who are occupying the space where free thinkers go, the whole Trutherville thing, they aren't either A, they're not informed about it, or B, they can't talk about it. They can't talk about media fakery at the level that we do. So there's this beef between Candace Owens and Alex Jones. He's calling her out as a psyop, etc. He said, I'm investigating her. It's clear this was all premeditated. I'm completely blown away. So Alex Jones is suggesting that Candace Owens is running a psyop in order to fracture the right wing. But anyway, my point here is that it's Alex Jones versus Candace Owens, but both of them agree that Charlie Kirk is dead. So that tells you this is kayfabe. It's fake. It doesn't mean anything. These are distinctions without difference. Like, this is not that substantive. And when it comes down to it, the red pill thing, and Jones is a red pill slinger. Red pill conspiracy content in general exists as a subset of the woke right, and Candace Owens is this bridge between red pill and J pill. She's a bridge, and we've seen this for some time. Plain Dakota says, "Is there a way to be on Discord to call in?" I can't guarantee that the audio will be any good. One of the reasons why I'm working towards getting into an office space is so I can set up my computers. Right now, I'm just working off of a phone. I have a little laptop Chromebook. I could probably bring that out and use that for calls. It's just a question of the audio, how good the audio is. Tim Pool has said Candace is a deep state shill trying to pull suburban women away from the right. Trump won because he got the suburban female voters. Candace is here to break that up. That's the story here. That she is a leftist infiltrator trying to destroy the right, which I honestly don't believe that's the case. She did engage in that performative conversion to Christianity and stuff. She's a fixture of the right, and she is in this position to bridge the conspiracies to the political side, which is a wrong turn. You don't exit Trutherville and then join the political soap operas. You're supposed to exit Trutherville and put some distance between you and the world stage to understand what it is. But no, that's not the direction things have been going. All right, let's continue here. I've sort of been binging on a lot of Helena Blavatsky, and it makes a lot of sense. I'm looking into a lot of these kind of neo-Gnostic movements like Theosophy, and I think that there's a point to it that's worth bringing up here, because we're often describing the symbolism, the occult subtext to various psyops, and in the movies in particular, because you have like two branches of it. You have one section that is content that reinforces psyops, and then you have this other section which is seemingly all about conveying some kind of coded symbolic storyline, some archetypal images, etc. But the symbolism, the body of symbolism, is so consistent and has been for such a long time that I'm thinking we need to understand this. And the more I look into it, the more I think the answers lie in understanding the significance of Saturn in particular, but in general of the New Age worldview, the pagan New Age cosmogony. But we'll get to that. So here's what Alex Jones said. And again, this is just kayfabe to Candace Owens. I was not sure if you were just evil or misguided. But now your source has been exposed as a fraud and you double down. I happen to know what's going to be released on Friday, and you will not be able to deceive the stupidest people out there. I don't know what happened to you, or maybe you were always a demon. So that's Alex Jones commenting on Candace Owens. And again, this is like where we're at right now. The psyops are all soap opera based. But this thing with Erica Kirk, I mean, Erica Kirk is a mind virus right now. And there's something going on with the memes where there's just this format of memes where people are just openly ridiculing the idea of a widow in a glitter suit backed by fireworks, grieving on TV and then turning into some kind of political rock star, future VP. Like for a lot of people, it's crossed a line where they're actually pushing back against it. And I'm hearing this from people in my life as well. Just everybody around me. It's like everyone's just mad at Erica Kirk. This has been such an effective psyop from this entire thing. In fact, I was just looking at that TV show Hulu, The Tempest. Might need to watch the last 3 episodes, but just want to point out that back in September, we predicted her character arc. And having watched Heads of State, I can affirm that we are 100% on point with this, that the character that she is a world stage personage, like a suit that she's wearing. Totally manufactured. But what we have this time that we've never had before is the quote crisis actor is still on the world stage. It's not just that day. And the longer that she exists in the public view, the more it's quite clear that she's in lockstep with this character, this fictional counterpart that she's portrayed as in various movies that are all interrelated. I mean, the same actress in two of these roles. Yeah, that was interesting too, Ribo Nation. Nicki Minaj called JD Vance the assassin, and she said it very clearly. It was an awkward moment. Here's the thing: this Turning Point event, the AmFest, America Fest, which is a bunch of grifters. She actually said that. She talked about how TPUSA was a grift. She meant to say gift. So you have this quote Freudian slip. Nicki Minaj calling JD Vance the assassin. They said it's a slip. He called Michigan, JD Vance, he called Michigan Mogadishu or something. And then he called it a Freudian slip. And then she says something about once he was assassinated, our value went up. Well, she said something that almost seemed like she slipped. So, anyway, over the course of the event, there were about half a dozen very conspicuous headline grabbing Freudian slips, which tells me that these are not unintentional. These are hooks. These are things that get people to pay attention. But anyway, a lot of people are noting, what's the deal? She's hanging out with Nicki Minaj in a glitter suit with fireworks. And this was the one who just a few months ago lost her husband on TV. And the reactions are pretty split on this one. But I'm just saying that the general consensus on Twitter seems to indicate that even the normie, non-PSYOP aware people are calling this whole thing out. And I think the truth of it is AmFest is just getting us ready for 2028, which I don't even care about. I don't plan on caring about it. I'm not going to vote for people who are participating in a rigged system. But anyway, it might be the case that we end up with a Vice President Kirk. And by the way, in that Heads of State, which is a comedy, Vice President Kirk is behind some assassination plot so she can take over. And she gets shot in the neck. So there's a couple of things about that movie that are worth noting, especially when you consider it's the same actress from Snake Eyes. But again, this is just stuff that we uncover here. Last week we were talking about a bit about Paul Vallely and Michael Aquino writing the book From PSYOP to Mind War decades ago, and how this general is now part of TPUSA. So that's, you could say it's ancient history, but I think it's entirely relevant because the book Mind Wars is about what we're describing. Although not entirely. Like, it's describing the use of simulations in order to avoid real conflict, etc., and this gradual takeover of these events and replacement with sim. But I kind of think it's strange how this book came about after this whole process has already been implemented. So I'm not sure what to make of it yet. Plain Decoded says, wasn't Zelensky in a show called Head of State in Ukrainian? I don't know. I'll look it up. It's John Cena. And as far as it's a comedy, it's kind of like this deadpan, almost Leslie Nielsen style comedy. I guess it's funny. Jameer May says, will you be getting into an apartment in 2026? I haven't decided. I mean, I would like to get an office space for sure, so I can prioritize that. But I'm also not really sure. It's a good question. I hadn't even thought about it. It's funny you ask. Yeah, look, I don't have my laptop near me. If you want to call in on Discord, I'm going to have to terminate and come back. I wasn't prepared for it. But we'll get back to open phones. We'll get back to a full format, etc. at some point in the future. I've sort of like I left some stuff behind a laptop. I kind of downsized everything a few months ago, and it's going to take a little time to correct all that. But I'm not in a hurry. I'm like on a vacation, and I see no reason why I should terminate the vacation. What would be the point? Like, why not just perpetuate it, like forever, basically? All right, let's see here. We're going on X to C. Yeah, I'm actually totally bored of Candace Owens, and I think that she's done her gig, and I think they're going to pull it down. I think they're going to WTC7 Candace Owens. I don't know if she has anything else to give. And then this has been out. The Grand Lodge of England is throwing a bit of a fit, and they're trying to get an injunction because I guess what's going to happen here is that they're going to be required to declare themselves Freemasons if they become police officers. It says here, 2/3 of officers agree this policy is needed, and the public would also agree. There have been calls going back years for the role of Freemasonry in policing to be properly addressed, including a recommendation in the report of the Daniel Morgan Independent Panel. It says, we believe that failing to act on these calls would damage trust among the public and other officers. Victims should be able to know that when they report allegations, the officers have been transparent about any potential conflicts of interest. Because the idea here is that they have some kind of loyalty to one another that might compromise the integrity of an investigation. So the story is essentially that in London, Freemasons are seeking an emergency injunction from the High Court to block this new police policy that would require them to tell on themselves. Now, my only real takeaway from this is that people can recognize why this might be a problem. They could see, okay, this could be problematic to have some kind of a secret society operating in this public institution. But this is, I think, a pretty good indicator of how psyops get performed. If you have this group, intelligence agencies, secret societies, whatever it is, and you have them dispersed in all these areas, it's not hard to understand how you could have compartmentalization in place such that simulated events could be performed as though they were actual news events on a regular basis with no, whistleblowers. Thank you, Big Hair Tsunami. By the way, I did put up a video today. I do go out and do my charcoal sketches, and I tend to record videos, and I'm uploading those for members, but they will go public usually a few days later. So I uploaded one today about Erica Kirk is a mind virus. But yes, Big Hair Tsunami has brought in the blue wrenches. 91 Oki, Soap, Opera, Ryler, Dop Larden, Elephant Tusks, Tau Live Vision, Elsa J, Salty Siren, 5-Star Q Barbecue. Is that what that is? Have all received, and Mike Archangel, gift memberships. 325 says New York City government will be a secret society in January 2026. Well, it's at this point right now, we're so far past the point of no return that, secret societies are just kind of like a vague way of describing something that's a little more pervasive. And I like to think of it as security clearance society. Same difference. But essentially what we're looking at today also is this new use of AI for political influence. Apparently, AI agents are 6 times more influential than people. And I think there's going to be an uptick on influence operations where the immune system of the world stage, a closed informational system, because it's just basically a fictional universe, but you have like safeguards in place, things that they censor, things that they want to marginalize or exclude. But I think they're going to get to a point where the types of censorship might be a little more indirect. It might get more into influencing opinions. And my opinions aren't going to change necessarily. Without, the facts cause me to adjust my assessments. But what I'm saying is AI bots aren't going to come along and get me to change my mind about certain things. But I'm thinking they're going to probably have these AI agents that are targeting the people around you, people who might be a little more malleable. Give them some memes, some counterpoints, and maybe work on each hot skull indirectly. I think they have this thing on lockdown, and we're certainly entering into a dark age. And the more I watch people on X, I mean, it's actually, I don't know if it's sad or it's funny. I guess it's a comedy, but we've collectively, this is like, it's kind of Black Mirror to think about, because the Black Mirror is the new hoodwink. We are witnessing right now, real time, the wool being pulled over everyone's eyes in a very significant way that I think is on par with illiteracy. Imagine if we were all rendered illiterate and the only people who could still read would be, people in government and people who own, billionaires, basically some kind of a de facto oligarchy of the intelligentsia. And then here we are, dumbed down, ignorant at the bottom. Well, they've created this dynamic with the generative AI video and the capabilities that we're just now starting to see. And it's just getting started. So it's just a little bit of fine tuning, and then we will technically be visually illiterate. We will be dependent upon the authorities to tell us what is and what isn't real, because we are now in the desert of the designated real. It's real if they say it is. Dirk Zink says, it's obvious everything's run by the elites. My question is, why are any people still asleep? It seems like common sense is gone. Because the system is pervasive and practically perfect. What's the incentive for somebody breaking with the program that serves them? Now, the thing is, it does serve them, but it serves a version of them that has been conditioned and programmed to be compatible to the box that they are in. So they seem well adjusted and happy, sure. Like Truman in the Truman Show was very happy until he figured out it was all a lie. So it's just like false happiness, but who are we to judge? Ryler says women will be phased out of existence. Jamarin May says pluribus is their plan. People just don't have the understanding of how far advanced they are technologically speaking. Well, there's a lot of hype for Disclosure coming up this summer, and people take this stuff seriously because there's a Steven Spielberg movie coming out about it. It's like, oh, it's in the movie, so it's got to be real. And the same people who will mock angels and traditional religious believe in aliens on the same grounds that people believe in angels. It's a faith thing. It's not an evidence thing. Riley says human beings were a mistake. I disagree with that. I think that's what the power elite want us to think. The worldview monopoly is an extension of all the religions. It's basically the newest iteration of religion, high tech, bred in circuses, but it's a religion. It's a uniform, universal worldview. And misanthropy is built into it. your carbon footprint. You're essentially a walking tumor on the side of Mother Earth. And that really builds upon, mortification of the flesh, the misanthropy in various religions, the idea that you're dirty and unsaved, you're an animal and you need to be cleaned and saved, etc. So there's a lot of self-hate that's programmed into religions, but it's also programmed into the dominant worldview. They want you to think that human beings were a mistake. They want you to agree with Agent Smith, like, oh, we are a virus. But I think it's the other way around. Like, I really don't approve of that line of thinking. In fact, I would challenge God on that if I believed it. I mean, I'm not a believer in any of these holy books. I think these are all constructs by government. But the idea that, like, what makes this entity, what gives it the right to judge me if it made me? It's like, it's not even fair. Like, so that opinion is just something I can just disregard. I don't care about the opinion of mass media, how they want us to see ourselves, which is all programming. It's all negative. Like, there's too many people, too many consumers. We need to scale back. And it seems like that was the theme in Wall-E, where you were made to feel bad for the robot because the humans were exploiting them. I mean, it's all just anti-human hate. So no, I'm sorry, I have to disagree. Human beings are not a mistake. And not only are we not a mistake, I think we might actually be prisoners. So, like, we're the good guys, we're the underdog. We should be on our own side here. Dirk Zink says, I said at a small gathering, we are in the dark ages now, and all the people looked at me like I was crazy for saying that. People are brainwashed from their programming. Right? And you know what else to say about that too? Is people are still programmed, which makes them compatible for the world stage model. And as long as you have that programming, you have I would say, a stunted view of what man is. Because they want us to think that we are ego. They want us to be egocentric, narcissistic, solipsistic for a reason. It's to contain us. There's a reason why psychology doesn't take the idea of intuition or synchronicity as anything more than some kind of apophenia or misfiring of neurons. Like, they don't think of these things as having any significance because of their implications. So if you think we're not in a dark age, it's because maybe you don't know what they switched off. The ascending ancient says, because we have free will and judgment is a good thing if you're good. Right. Well, I judge the religions as institutions here designed to keep us in darkness, controlled opposition to spirituality. I judge all the religions as equally bad. And I think that they're all extensions of the Saturnian element here, the control over time and space. Like I said earlier today, I pointed out that I think if you're going to ask, who's at the top of this, we're talking about worldview monopoly. It's this new monotheism. Who's behind Big Brother's viewfinder? It's like, it's probably the demiurge. Like, I am really thinking that we are at the bottom of this place, whatever this is. I'm not talking about shape or anything, but as far as our cosmology, I think that we've been given an inaccurate picture that minimizes our significance in it. So, of course, people aren't going to believe we're in a dark age because I think they've been kept out of the dark when it comes to a lot of the things that they should be aware of that would lead them to these conclusions. It just shows you how compartmentalized everything is. It's like lately I've been thinking about this. I've had a very active intuition for a long time, but in the last 3 years, it's really heightened. And I know I talk about this like it's normal, but sometimes I have to remember, oh yeah, that's crazy. People don't have that. But I stopped caring about what other people thought because of the various ways that the information, that the intuitions were exceptionally valuable, indicative of somebody with more information than me in some way offering guidance. And eventually, I dispensed with the idea of an external guide, and it occurred to me that there's an aspect of our subconscious that is actually very intelligent and organized that isn't integrated into the ego, but that you can align with. And that would explain a lot of intuition, which is drawing from your wider knowledge base, most of which is filtered out because you can only process so much information every minute versus how much you actually take in. So I think there's this resource, it's like this cognitive surplus just sitting there, and it's treated like something that's accidental, anomalous, that you don't control it. And I'm thinking, no, actually, I'm pretty sure that what we call intuition is part of our survival mechanism. I think it makes you impervious to gaslighting, but I think they shut that off for a reason. They don't want you noticing patterns. They don't want you to break out of the 24-hour news cycle where they actually cram it full of like 2 days worth of news. They don't want you to think about long-term patterns. And they certainly don't want you to override their gaslighting because your intuition tells you the truth. So that's what I'm thinking here. Part of the dark age is not only detaching us from reality, merging us with fiction, putting us in hyper reality, but I think it's also dumbing down the faculties of the mind and marginalizing it as paranormal, occult, or spiritualism, when I don't think that's it. I think it's just an element of what should be psychology that just hasn't been properly understood, although I think it has been by some. I've been looking into Carl Jung, and you know what's interesting about this concept of alchemy, which came up in one of the conversations, one of the audiobooks, is alchemy seems to be analogous to Freemasonry in the sense that you have this concept of stonemasons building temples as an allegory for higher states of consciousness, as an allegory for understanding the universe and your place in it, the geometry of divinity, whatever, the architecture. And alchemy is the same thing. It's not actually about real chemistry. It's all just allegory for the evolution of the mind and how to speed up a certain process or understand it. Vertically integrated consciousness, aligning with this wider field of information. And it has different terms. Higher self or something is one thing I've come across that makes sense, but it's distinct from Freud's superego. But I do think it's useful to think about these things in terms of models and how the mind is the ego, our center of awareness is more or less an aperture, but it's not the entirety of who you are. And I think that's one of the points of the programming, though, is to keep you thinking that all you are is that viewpoint, is that ego, and you must defend that. And that is solely a byproduct of course, your senses, your experiences here as an animal. Jamarin May says people confuse God as the eternal life force that flows through all, with the imposter fallen angelic beings posing as God. Yeah, the Gnostic idea is that there is a source of all consciousness, and it's just symbolized by some kind of like, um, it's not even personified, so you can't even anthropomorphize it. It's basically, think of it as like a source of light or something, like a big bang that never stops, and that out of this sprang Sophia, which is very much like Eve or Pandora, like the woman ruins the universe. So Sophia comes out and she makes this entity, and I think she's embarrassed of it, and she hides it in these clouds. It wakes up and it thinks that it is God. And so it creates the world. And then it acts like a psychopath and it makes everybody worship it and burn cows and stuff. And there you have it, Christianity. There you have it. The entire Abrahamic faiths are basically a system that aligns you with the creator, but it's not the source of creation. It's this intermediary. The demiurge is what it's referred to as. It has a name. It's described as this hideous lion dragon thing. But whatever it is, it elicit, elicits the support of these things called archons. And they have like essentially like matrix agents, and they're all over this place, and they just are here to extract our soul sparks, because apparently we originate from the source of creation and we were trapped here by this thing. And our soul spark is encased in our meat suits. And the whole purpose of the confinement here is to get you to forget that you have a soul spark. So you fully identify with the material, the matter, you lose yourself, and you essentially you're sacrificed to this entity. And you don't get to escape. And the path to escaping isn't through faith, it's not through belief, but it's through direct knowledge, knowledge of self. So the idea that you would identify with the soul spark more than the physical vehicle that it partially resides in, that you would actually transcend this place, and that when you die, you wouldn't actually die. Anyway, it's a nice story. But again, I think it's notable that all the chaos begins with Sophia, which is like Pandora opening the box and unleashing chaos, or Eve and the apple. Recurring themes. Dirk Zink says, I've noticed almost all the younger generations are almost all narcissists and have a victim mentality. Yeah, well, it's being mainstreamed. And I pointed this out in 2020, that I think it would be useful for this form of government by mass mind control to foment highly narcissistic personality types, like to actually make it acceptable, build it into the culture, make it desirable. Like people want, like unironically idealize Patrick Bateman, for example. And the reason they would want this is that you want a lot of control freaks because they can help maintain the status quo. We saw this in 2020. At that point, it was like, the elite is not just some small group of people at the top of Mount Olympus. No, the elite is your next door neighbor, and the snitches and the Karens, the mask Karens, the control freaks. The ascending agent says, I've been sub for a while but haven't tuned in. I'm glad that I did. Yeah, I will be passing out wrenches to members here, by the way. Salty Siren says, it's a degradation realm of recycling spirits. See, that's what I think. I think that's probably a good way of looking at it. And this is why I brought up this concept. We were talking about Westworld, how the synths are trapped in a simulation, and every day they die horrible deaths. But every day, the next day happens, and it's just a reboot of the previous day, and they don't have any continuity. So they're starting out with amnesia, and they die the same way. And it's like pointless, and it never ends. Well, this is very much like the idea of souls recycling and then having their minds erased between incarnations. And the only way they escape is when they start to remember previous days. What came before. And one of the antagonists, the main antagonist, happens to be this guy called the Man in Black, played by Ed Harris, the guy who was the creator of the Truman Show. So again, a very demiurgic, false creator and prisoner of souls. Truman's captor is that actor is the same guy who plays the Man in Black with a knife. Very Saturnian. And he's the one that Dolores has to overcome in order to escape her confinement. But this character, this archetype, is very common throughout all these various movies. And one of the recurring themes here, of course, is it controls time and space, that you are essentially a prisoner of this Reaper character. And I've been referring to people as having Westworld syndrome if they look at every day's news as though it might be real or it might be a psyop. It's like, what are you talking about? Don't you remember what happened yesterday and the day before and before that, weeks before, months before? We're looking at systemic fakery built into the system, never corrected, persistent fake events that populate our consensus worldview. So, why would we approach the next day with complete amnesia to what came before? You're not going to see the patterns, the longer patterns, and how fake everything is if you don't have the long term perspective here. Because what we're discerning is that the major transformative historic events of the last 100 years have pretty much all been staged or fake. And if you think that's not the case, tell me which one, because I'm curious. But moreover, that these events are planned decades in advance. So we have these two timelines. We have the timeline that we actually live on as we exist and do our daily lives, and we actually experience the world, in the meatverse. But then you have this separate timeline of all the fake events planned in advance that are superimposed over our worldview through media, psychological operations. That secondary timeline merges with the mainstream timeline. But the key point here is that like every major psyop for 2026 is already written. These things aren't done spontaneously. And it's safe to say that every single psychological operation, whether it be a terror attack, a nuke, uh, some kind of celebrity drama, whatever it is, it's already in the program. We're watching the theater of Psywar, and there's a program. We're not privy to it. Certain people are. Among those would be those directors who insert predictive content into their movies, things that foreshadow upcoming fake events. So, what we're doing here is we're creating a separate platform for those who are cognizant of the long term proactive engineering of history itself and how that allows the worldview monopolists to not only control time and synchronize our worldview collectively, but it has seemingly given them such rigging capabilities that at this point, I think it invalidates politics as anything more than another form of entertainment, a steam valve, and a way to create the illusion that we have any control when we don't. And that's not me being black-pilled. That's just me accurately describing things. There's no reason to be delusional about it. Harmon Walker, I appreciate that very much. Harmon Walker became an annual subscriber at the Substack account. And things have been a little slow, but they're going to pick up. Tomorrow, I'm getting the books, the handbook for the recently deprogrammed. I'll be getting those copies signed and shipped out tomorrow, and then I'll buy more. Phil in LeBlanc says, oh, you got a gift membership. Gordon, Benton, it's Snoopy. Mimsy's Cat, Rome 1.0, Max Carter, Bach Precision, Bro Sanchez TV official, Friendly Ghost Kinda, LBB Store, Chadent Ant, Nothing is Coincidence, Haystack Sniper, Citizen, Reality Witness, K-Swan have all received 18-inch blue titanium wrenches. It should be by your front door. Soon I'll have these dropped off by Amazon drones. Jamarian May says, hence why the Q PSYOP says you're watching a movie and encourages you to enjoy the show. Yeah, but they do so with this fake awareness because they say, oh, it's all just a movie, but they think that Hillary Clinton's really dead, that Tom Hanks really got killed at Guantanamo Bay, that children are actually being trafficked underground by Democrat vampires who suck their blood. Like, they say it's all a movie, but they believe all the crap. So, like, all of the bad stuff is happening, but to cover it up, they're putting on costumes of the people they killed and going on TV. I'm sorry, but QAnon is just straight. I spell it crack with a Q. You know, they're on that Q pipe. It is essentially mental illness, but it's a state created cult. It didn't just emerge out of nowhere. This is mind war. It was a what they would call, I think, in spycraft terms, this is a direct action. Well, they were targeting this particular group of people with these wild ideas, and they got pretty far with it. They didn't go full hail bop, but I mean, January 6th was pretty bad. It's totally fake, by the way, fake and staged as far as the people that were there. But all the people who are part of the Q psyop, uh, they don't think that Trump is part of the show. They think that he's like this legitimate guy who's trying to expose things. No, he put on fake blood on July 13th, 2024. Trump's fake head wound thing was a magic trick. And there's no way he has plausible deniability. Obviously, he's part of the show. Truth Hurt says the U.S. banned all imports of new DJI drones, not only DJI, but other manufacturers. Igo Dago says, I ordered a sushi specialty last night called the Fallen Angel. We brought it home. Well, we're waiting on the aliens to show up. This disclosure thing, which I say again, aliens are angels for atheists. But I do think that there might be reason to think that this buildup for some kind of alien takeover, where a higher intelligence hijacks our world and unifies us and makes us compatible to mix in with the Galactic Federation, whatever. That whole alien coming down scenario thing has been like a mainstay of science fiction. This has been essentially predictive programming for multiple generations. Well, what do you think the point of it is? What are they actually getting us ready for, if not aliens? And I'm thinking probably AI. They may be able to pull off the illusion, or maybe even in reality, that they have something of such high intelligence that we might as well just turn over control of everything to it. And that's a major theme in so many of these sci-fis. Like the 100, you have Ollie, who is this AI who has decided that it would be in the best interest of Gaia if she put a bunch of babies in a space ark and nuked the planet, and then 18 years later lets them come down but keeps them primitive. And that has sort of a mud flood theme to it. The idea of you take this small group, you wipe out everybody, and then you repopulate. Kind of like Noah's Ark. The mud flood theory has this idea that the world is wiped out, and then a bunch of like orphans in an orphan train arrived in every city and dropped off a bunch of babies. That's what the 100's about. Only it's spacecraft that are timed to come down. But the idea of keeping everyone primitive is interesting. In fact, there's an episode in that show, The 100, where I got to look this up. No, it was Chronicles of Shannara. Similar theme, though, where it's in the future, like 500 years post-apocalypse, but instead of looking like Fallout, it looks like Lord of the Rings. And there's this episode where the characters are in a forest and they fall through a hole, like a pit, and they end up in some 20th century ballroom. Yes, exactly, Truth Hurts. Spielberg coming out with a new movie about disclosure. I may have to re-watch Close Encounters. I know it had some connections with the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment and white noise. But Spielberg is certainly a meta scripter. And that reminds me, didn't he do AI with Stanley Kubrick? Yes, Spielberg and Kubrick's collaboration on AI 2001 was a decades-long project. Kubrick developed the concept but passed the directing duties to Spielberg. Dark, cerebral sci-fi with Spielberg's warmth and technical mastery. A hybrid film that explores. Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, AI, artificial intelligence, that was I guess that would have been the final project, public project of Kubrick. No, actually, that's right. He handed it over in 1995 because after that he did Eyes Wide Shut. And I don't think Kubrick died when they said that he did. There was some kind of a indicator of it being a hoax in Eyes Wide Shut. But I agree with Chartword in his breakdown, who believes that Kubrick was probably turning his attention to 9/11, which he certainly was one of the main directors of. Jamarin May says, Tim, I figured out the two main psyops of 2026, how it relates to AI. The first is they will say that ETs are communicating through the AI, and they will use this to push their alien integration. That's intriguing. I think there was that movie called Third Body Problem. I think that's the one. The Three Body Problem. And the aliens took over the internet or something, and they called everyone bugs. You are bugs. And I kind of get that idea as well with this trailer for this Spielberg movie, and also with Pluribus, that they're introducing the idea of aliens arriving as non-corporeal, whether they manifest through people or through computers. But they've certainly opened that door. And you also have to consider HAL 9000 is an early version of this thing. But the idea that the alien invasion concept could have been used to prepare us for this is what I've been kind of putting forth here. Jamarin May says, also, they will use AI tech to fake a massive pandemic, which will make CV-19 look like kindergarten. I disagree on that. I don't think that they will repeat the exact same thing, even if they amplify it. I think they might recycle the whole lockdown thing under the premise of radioactive fallout. I think that's a likelihood. And I do think they will have a pandemic, but it will be a cyber pandemic. It will be disease X. It will be the public recognizing the need to lock down the internet, introduce internet IDs. It's like a mask to go online, some kind of mind vax. But I think we're going to experience the digital equivalent of CV-19. Disease X. Now, there was this movie that came out the same month that Sputnik 5 came out. And Sputnik 5 was the name of the vax that Putin came up with. But that same month, which was August 2020, a movie called Sputnik came out. And it was about this Soviet cosmonaut who returns to Earth with a virus. And it's actually an alien in a symbiotic relationship with him. So it infects like a flu, and it lives in your esophagus. But while you sleep, this big reptoid thing crawls out of your mouth, and it finds a victim. And it reveals itself, this big alien mantis thing, in order to terrify the victim because it feeds off of their stress hormones, which kind of echoes the whole adrenochrome thing in a lot of ways, which is kind of strange. It says here, the creatures need cortisol from living, terrified humans to stay alive. And therefore, so too does their host. They do have this symbiotic relationship. Now they have to coexist. Imagine that. You have an alien in your esophagus, and you got to go let it scare people and eat them so you can live. But anyway, this came out in Russia, summer of 2020. If you haven't seen it, it's called Sputnik. I think it's pretty good. It says here it was going to have its world premiere in April of 2020, but it was postponed because of the virus. Okay. Well, anyway, great movie. I do think this reoccurring theme of feeding off of fear and adrenochrome is something worth exploring outside the context of the uh, Q narratives, because it is a very common facet of horror and sci-fi. Like, what are we actually talking about here? And I think this might also correlate with this Gnostic idea that we do live in a realm that is designed to extract your soul, and primarily through terror and fear, but that there is some sort of energetic exchange. This place is inherently negative, absorbing your light. Violet Pengon says that's like Pennywise. He is a parasite of dairy. Interesting. I haven't seen the new series, but I did notice it had Bert the Turtle, kind of a Nuke reference. But we'll continue to delve into this because, again, this idea of like, okay, there was another movie that came out in 2009. It was called Daybreaker. And in this one, it all started with the bat, is like the tagline. And so Daybreakers has to do with this. Let's see, pull this up. Oh, yeah, this one's pretty good. It's a 2009 dystopian sci-fi horror vampire film. But there's this plague that starts with a bat, and it essentially becomes pandemic. However, the vampires are actually secretly harvesting from real humans. They're supposed to be drinking synthetic stuff. And at one point, the character played by Sam Neill talks about how the fake blood isn't as good because you can't taste any fear in it. But anyway, yeah, this is a movie about a vampire virus that takes over the world. And that's the theme from I Am Legend, the book by Richard Matheson, which might really be the first in the whole genre of this zombie pandemic thing. And my contention with a lot of that stuff, like Walking Dead, and the reason why we were hit with so much zombie stuff leading up to 2020, is it was predictive programming for quarantine to create this idea of the unvaxxed as this dangerous horde, and you must, and this was actually in that movie Bird Box with, if you haven't seen Bird Box, it was sort of a pandemic story, but if you look somebody in the eyes, you would catch their insanity. And it starts Sandra Bullock. So they're going around blindfolded, and they quarantine from the infected by going to a home for the blind at the end. But that whole movie was about this desperate attempt to escape the hordes of infected who wouldn't wear the mask over their eyes. And there's a similar one too. I often reference Hot Skulls, about mind viruses that are being propagated by people who aren't wearing earplugs. And you have to wear earplugs because if you hear these mind viruses, you catch them. And the people who are carrying these mind viruses are like super spreaders. And they're called hot skulls because all these mind viruses are causing their brains to overheat. But they have the world under lockdown because of mind viruses. So that disease X thing that I mentioned, as the more likely scenario than a reboot of 2020, you kind of see that in Hot Skulls. And if you think about it, we're talking about the commons, like you got outer space, cyberspace, and then they turn the world into a commons with the pandemic model, where one guy in Wuhan can bring everything down. So now we have to look at everything as this is a shared space. And I think what they want to do, and this is for the long term success of their global mind control program, is they're going to want to establish certain boundaries and parameters. They need to lock it down right now and get us used to the idea that cyberspace is a commons and one bad mind virus can trigger some calamity. Therefore, the public will acquiesce to some kind of changes, which will make it even easier for them to maintain this closed system. Because in a way, we're in a quarantine, except for those of us who have broken out. The world stage is a quarantine against objective reality. It's like being in a bunker, a global bunker. Like we're kind of in this Truman Show stage. Someone was watching, what was that movie called? Just came out, Running Man, the new Running Man, and they said it's full of references to Kill the Execs, which has some Luigi connotations. Here it is, Frank Murr. Kill the Execs, lots of 33s, deep fakes, and general nuke programming. And there's Obama in 13th Street in the film. Kill the Execs. All right, let's continue here. Domestic extremism, anti-corporation peppered throughout. Okay, definitely on the same vein as this Luigi thing, class warfare, kill the rich, eat the rich. Is anything real anymore? In 2025, even sports fans started to doubt. Washington Post says here at the end of 2025, with major sports so entwined with gambling as to make you wonder whether our games still exist to crown champions or merely as fodder for young sportsbook customers. But not so long ago, sports leagues spoke of the gambling industry as if it were the devil itself. Yeah, definitely interesting that, of course, they're in a very limited way, but people are being told, yeah, it's fake. Well, yeah, maybe it's fake and manipulated, but it's probably even faker than that. Cities prepare for New Year's events as terror attack fears run high. Cities are making final preparation for New Year celebrations for millions as concerns remain after recent terror incidents. Well, the more they prepare for it, the more they drill for it, the more likely it's going to happen. Of course, it will be fake. By the way, somebody found that the America Fest, the AmFest flag, their logo with the American flag had 33 stars on it. Just very consistent branding across the board for all of these psyops. Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua draws 33 million viewers on Netflix. But that was real, right? That was real. And what about Andrew Tate? Winded after 30 seconds, fighting like a drunk. I was kind of surprised. Dr. Jane Ruby, pretty good Twitter account, tweeted this today. Occam's razor. Charlie's alive somewhere. Charlie was in on it. Erica is running the ruse. There are no children. And this is coming because there's a lot of pictures where people are noticing discrepancies with the children, which we've noticed as well, like significant discrepancies. where it apparently looks like they're just renting children for photo ops. EDO Liver, this guy's tweeting about this. He says, nobody's talking about this. On September 10th, the spy show was released. This is no coincidence. The Republican presidential candidate shot in the throat in the exact same spot. They obviously wrote and produced it some time ago. So that's good. I like to see that people notice these things. And I have to direct them over to my timosmond.substack, because I have a whole slew of articles on that show, The Tempest. And beyond the surface, the guy gets shot. Well, the guy who gets shot also has Trump's birthday, for one. But two, the main point of the show is the widow taking over the husband's organization, including a fake cry on TV. But he's right. Nobody's talking about it because they got the memo that you're only allowed to talk about Snake Eyes. But I call this the Erica Kirk conundrum. Like, Erica Kirk has done more for auto-hoaxing than anybody since Robbie Parker. Like, if you need any more evidence of world stage theater and scripted fake characters and fake events, we have it all here. And Occam's razor would be, if you were to strip away all of these assumptions about secret weapons, exploding mics, 52 different versions of how it happened according to Candace Owens, the simplest explanation is that Charlie Kirk is alive and an actor. That shouldn't even be a controversial thing to say. That's how they used to deep fake us. Before CGI, before AI, we've been deep faked with fake people, actors, like spies, embedded agents, false personas. All right, let's see here. Continuing through my Twitter feed. By the way, if you want to get into Discord, I will be posting a link in the next newsletter. Even though it's something of a slow PSYOP week, a lot of us are doing research all the time, watching relevant movies. And one of the strange things that I noticed recently is just how many Tylers there are in this story. You know, Tyler Robinson, the shooter. Then you got Tyler, the guy who shot the music video with Erica Kirk, the 910 thing, all predictive. You have Tyler, the executioner, in Snake Eyes. Then you have Tyler at TPUSA, who backstabbed Charlie by embezzling. And then you have her ex-boyfriend, Tyler. I'm like, how many Tylers is that? What's the deal? Additionally, she's friends, or her ex-boyfriend, we're talking about Erica Kirk, is Cabot Phillips, the guy with the Pizzagate tattoo on his lip. And Cabot was a good friend of Charlie Kirk, and now he speaks at TPUSA. So what's coming out of all this is simply, I think, that people are realizing, at least some people, I mean, not everyone, obviously, but a lot of people are recognizing how this whole thing is contrived, that everything about Erica Kirk and Charlie Kirk is some kind of contrivance that has all the hallmarks of a major PSYOP likely to promote Vance in 2028. And TPUSA, of course, is instrumental in that. And TPUSA is obviously fake. Jamarin May says, have you seen the latest Roseanne tweet? She keeps talking about how things are going to get so good and how the double ozone is being removed. She's kind of a Q person, which is very contradictory because she's also anti-J pill. Well, the QAnon thing is basically blood libel repackaged. So it's a contradiction for her to promote Q stuff on one hand, but then on the other hand, not be down with the J pill thing. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know how coherent she is. I mean, she's funny, But she is another one of these comedians that has been used in this area of bridging conspiracy theorists into politics. Like they merge the two. They use these like from Joe Rogan, Bill Hicks, or I mean Alex Jones. There's a ton of these influential, like Matt Hyde, these right wing comedians who are also like reinforcing psyops all the time. Like we are all Charlie Kirk. Although she's kind of fallen on the side of the neocon, pushing back against the woke right, which again, it really is a contradiction. But regardless, I'm on her Twitter feed right now. And I don't know how far these individuals are. Is she a insider? Does she know that Charlie Kirk's not really dead? Probably not. I think things are very compartmentalized, and they have to be really careful about giving information to people that might compromise the entire mission. All right, well, I'll do my best to set up phones for next time. I'm sure I can make it happen. I'll have to run a few tests. Maybe there's a way to use Discord as a secondary window on Restream on my phone. Like there might even be a very simple way to go about it. Now, what is Roseanne Barr talking about with devil ozone? Is she saying that like chemtrails or something? Okay. Rest assured, the devil ozone is being removed up there. You're going to see things get good quick. Sounds more like trust the plan, like she hit the Q pipe. Yeah, I'm looking at this video of her. She looks zonked. I don't even know if she's fully awake here, but she's been doing the same thing since, 2020-ish or so. Totally zonked out, talking about there's going to be an awakening, there's going to be a reckoning. Nothing's going to happen. And as far as devil ozone, I don't know if she's talking about chemtrails or if it's some kind of metaphor. But she's not a prophet. She's not especially insightful about how things work. I mean, I think she's hilarious and a talented comedian, etc. But we have to keep in mind that these influencers are all playing ball. They're reinforcing the psyops. They're part of the infrastructure of the psy war. And so I look at them as, I mean, in a way, they're kind of your enemy. Not in a personal way, but from an ideological perspective, they're your opponents, we should say. Opponents. I won't say enemy, but these are your opponents. They're not on your side. People get tricked. Like they can't spot wolves in sheep's clothing. People fell for Charlie Kirk's act. The guy's probably an atheist. You really think he believes any of what he said? No, he's a polemicist. He has talking points, but it's very kayfabe, very stage managed, not especially insightful, zero discernment. If you consider that these people who are claiming to speak for, God and they're saving America from the devil Democrats and all this stuff, like they take on this idea that they're somehow pious and spiritual, but they can't see through fake news. No, because they're part of the system of lies. They're all liars, wittingly or not. King Ravana says she's in that Tom McDonald rap. Yeah, I think the Tom McDonald rap with Roseanne Barr is the best thing that he's ever done. That was actually pretty well done, I think. She surprised me, but Tom McDonald is faux outrage. Kind of like, and he's on the position of like kind of woke rightish, but he's also a Canadian. But he's awfully like patriotic as an American for a Canadian. Somebody tried to convince me that he used to be Macklemore. Is that he also has this dual identity? Macklemore, American rapper. And then if you imagine him with a bunch of bad facial tattoos and dreads, you kind of do have a Tom McDonald, like a dual identity. But looking at it now, I don't know. I don't know. You can do a lot with prosthetics. All right, so a lot of New Year's Eve events have been canceled because of terror attacks. So there might be something to look forward to. Looks like many events have been axed after the FBI uncovered a planned bombing attack in Los Angeles. Right, because they instigated it. It's like one dummy on the internet and 3 feds in a Discord server, and like, hey, do you want to do a bomb? And the guy's like, yeah. And then they just freak out. In the wake of the Bondi Beach shooting that killed 15 and injured 40 more, Australia's largest city has canceled the fireworks at the beach. That cheesecloth guy went back there and he cried on camera after bleeding on camera. Due to the current situation on the ground, Waverley Council has decided to cancel it. Paris, the French capital's popular music event, has been canceled. Tokyo, the Japanese capital, was forced to copy Paris in the cancellation of one of their biggest New Year's events, scrapping the countdown. All right, what's going on then? It seems like a hoax indicator. It's not like something's going to happen for real. So why are they hyping this up? They're setting the stage. I've been thinking this quite a bit ever since Laura Loomer got a desk at the Pentagon. And really since Cheney's death. Seems like they were trying to get this into our minds. Violet points out in their Discord server that the show Paradise, I've been told to watch this, a mega tsunami and nuke attacks. Post-apocalyptic world has a presidential assassination. Now that's intriguing, considering we've been talking about Poseidon as the follow-up to the Calypso thing in space, as it relates to the Christopher Nolan Odyssey coming out. Huge production. It's going to come out in July. But the fact that they have this tsunami thing, I think is significant. And the storm stuff I've been thinking about as well. Something to look forward to. Jamirin May says, sounds like March 2020. Just have to wait for Tom Hanks to cancel his New Year's plans. Right. Well, they are hyping it up. And they've been hyping this up since that thing at Bondi Beach. I don't know if it would be on New Year's, but I don't know. Again, they use these drills in order to create closed movie sets to do the things for real. How many drills were they doing on 9/11 for terror attacks? They create closed sets for all kinds of fakery. The ascending agent says, Israeli false flag blamed on Iran. Well, here's what's going to happen. It's going to be faked 100% by the PSYOP entertainment complex. It's going to be assumed that it was done by Iran. But the woke right is going to say that Israel did it and false flagged Iran. The problem with that point of view is the assumption that it really happened and we can blame Israel. Like, no, if it didn't actually happen, then you lose your scapegoat. This is why the J-pill people are so lost right now. They don't know. Honestly, they're clueless in this because their whole worldview is based on a scapegoat for all the bad things. And here we are pointing out, hey, by the way, all the bad things were fake. Well, then what does that do to their scapegoat story, their oppression narrative? It pulls the rug out from under them. So they want to hold on to, it was real, but this other group did it. Same template as 9/11. I don't expect any plot twists. They're just going to recycle the old scripts. So I made a post on that video with Nick Fuentes and Clavicles talking about looks maxing. And I said, looks maxing is gender affirming care for the woke right. And it's been viewed 8,000 times and 200 likes. And this is just like an hour ago. And I'm getting a lot of hate by looks maxers for saying this. I think it's funny. They're talking about hitting themselves in the face with a hammer to make their skulls thicker. And this guy's telling Nick Fuentes that he's old. He's like, you're my uncle because you're 26. I'm like, what is this? This is some extremely American psycho-like behavior. But this is where we're at. This is the face of groypers right now. And again, groypers are controlled opposition just as anything else is. It's probably mostly feds. Surprised we still have to talk about Nick. See, this is how you know it's a slow news week also. Nick Fuentes is doing beauty tips with Clavicles. I really don't get it. I don't believe this guy used a hammer to make his jawline stand out. If you don't know who I'm talking about, consider yourself lucky. But I'm seeing more of this. A lot of phrenology, a lot of in-depth facial proportion analysis, and the idea of increasing one's SMV, increase your sexual market value by hitting your face with a hammer. Like that's where we're ending up 2025. All right, well, we will be active in the Discord this evening. I'm getting back into the routine here. I had a lot of things on the side I had to take care of. I'm getting back into school to wrap up something I was working on, it was journalism, was my last major, but I think there's a lot there. It'll open doors when it comes to the publication wing of the IPS, specifically the tabloid, which I'm looking forward to launching officially in 2026. So thanks to all those who have supported the channel, members, donors, etc. It's all accelerant. This is all going towards Autohoax maxing and preparing for this inevitable collision between Trutherville and the off-world stage. And it's getting there. We're seeing skirmishes here and there. I had to ban Dave J. I mean, we're starting to get friction, which is a good thing. We want that. We need to really shine a light on the chasm between us. And in addition to drawing attention to the fact that there is an unbreachable chasm, we also want to recruit those who have figured it out enough. Like if you've 90% deprogrammed yourself and you're facing the exit to the Truman Show, this is where you go. You don't go to politics. And what I'm working on now for promoting the book, this whiteboard conversation, it's going to involve a description of the timelines, the worldview, and the implementation of psyops to create fictional historic events that then persist as, quote, real. And what I aim to do here is demonstrate the futility of political engagement and why your sole engagement should be, at least for 2026, the great deconstruction. I think we need to make an attempt at making this a permanent fixture. And it's about to go. So if you want to be involved in the great deconstruction, you will need to be in the Discord server. And that's where it's going to have its beginnings. And we're going to be accelerating it with AI. I mean, the timing of it is perfect. And we've already done some preliminary work here. We're just getting started. So if you want to be involved, go to ips.monster. I put a link to the Discord there. And we will continue this tomorrow at some point. Probably multiple times. I'm usually out during the day and I'll live stream while I'm doing art or something. And then I'm going to try to come in here each night at the same time. All right, we'll see you in Discord.